Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on clean energy, workforce diversity, access, inclusion, and belonging. Our webinar has been developed in partnership with the LEARN program. The LEARN program is a San Diego-based workforce education and training, and it has partnered with New Buildings Institute and AWHI, which is Advanced Water Heating Initiative, to offer free energy efficiency, and electrification webinars. In case you'd like to have more information about this, please do visit their website and learn more about their details. Coming back to today's webinar theme, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, workforce development, empowerment. All of these are different terms with a very definitive meaning. But when all of these terms come together, they form an idea, a concept, which is equity in workforce diversity. And this is not a new term. It's not a latest buzzword or just a mere industry jargon. This is something that we have been talking about. We do know what it means. But the question is, have we really acknowledged this whole conceptual understanding of this term? And if the answer is yes, how much have we implemented this or integrated this in our system in a way that it reflects inclusiveness in our practices? This is exactly what we're going to talk about today. And for that, I have two incredible panelists joining me to further this conversation. Please join me in welcoming Monica Guerra from Emerald City's Collaborative and Sandy Fisher-Lobby from Energy Solutions. Monica is an Economic Inclusion Program Manager for the Northwest region at Emerald City's Collaborative. She has been an economic development professional for the past 14 years, and her core strength is assisting underserved communities achieve their small business dreams. Apart from that, Monica also has an expertise in developing educational materials for entrepreneurs and underwriting, as well as overseeing small businesses lending for community development financial institutions. Joining Monica is our second panelist, Sandy Fisher-Lobby, Energy Efficiency Fellow at Energy Solutions. In her own words, Sandy has been changing hearts and light bulbs for the past 25 years in the energy efficiency sector. But energy efficiency is not her first love. She did have a stint as a special events producer in the entertainment and sports sector as well. The strength that Sandy brings to forth lies in workforce education, equitable decarbonization, and implementing residential retrofit programs. She has been a part of Southern California Edison's mobile education unit, as well as Energy Upgrade California. And today, both Monica and Sandy have joined us to have a conversation on what is workforce diversity? Why is it important? What does economic inclusion mean? And how can we, as a conscious citizen, create a platform of opportunities and reflect inclusiveness in our practices? So I'm not going to waste any more time and take a step back and let Monica come forward and chat a little bit about economic inclusion. Over to you, Monica.
Great, thank you. So super excited to be here. This is one of my favorite topics, so I'm excited to have the interaction. So I'm hopefully going to do what is a somewhat quick presentation, and then go on from there. Oh, it says I can share once other participants aren't sharing.
Just a minute, give me a second. Now you should be able to share.
Awesome. Okay, so as Vidhisha said, my name is Monica Guevara. I am Program Manager of Economic Inclusion at Emerald Cities. I oversee the Contractor Development Program in our Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, and just going to do a little kind of overview of Emerald Cities first, a little bit about the work that we do, what I do specifically, talk about why diversity is important, which hopefully most people in the room are buying into, and then kind of touch on two different topics that have been top of mind for me in this work. So Emerald Cities is a national nonprofit. We are located in 5 regions across the country. And basically we look at everything through this environmental justice, climate justice lens, but also with that, also have like an economic justice lens as well. So when we think about who is most impacted by climate change and how to get, um, change and retrofits to those communities and those frontline communities, we're also thinking about who benefits and who benefits economically from that work that is being done. So trying to think about all of this work and this transition, this just transition to a greener economy in a very holistic way. So ideally, we envision healthy, sustainable, powerful, thriving communities, especially communities of color. So when we talk about economic inclusion, and so you'll hear me reference economic inclusion and not just workforce development, because we don't want to think just about the jobs and the workers and how to get people into the jobs. We want to think beyond that and think about how people, who gets, not just who gets hired and fired, but also who gets promoted versus passed over, who gets the benefit of profit and ownership of businesses versus those that don't have that pathway. So making sure that these markets are accessible to everyone regardless of their background. So a little bit about what I do specifically. So in our contractor development work, we work a lot with what in the industry is called these MWDVBEs. So as usual, it's a huge acronym that is government inspired, but it's working with minority, women, disadvantaged, veteran-owned construction firms, usually in these climate critical trades. And we're really looking to them to be this really keystone element of this just transition. So being that they are doing, the work that really does a lot of the energy efficiency and retrofitting in our communities, a lot of times these contractors have language capacity, they have expertise, they have ties to community that a lot of other contractors don't. So if we can supply them with the resources, the tools, the connections, and ideally even some of the financing, we can just see how these businesses will grow, flourish, be able to do more work in communities, be able to hire within communities, and really just help us accomplish our environmental goals. So what we offer is an academy, training, a network, and it varies by region, but we offer it in all of our regions, connection to work opportunities, and when possible, connection to capital. So in this part, I wanted to break off and talk a little bit about why diversity is important. And I also wanted to touch on kind of the nuances and I guess specificity that is required. So there's a lot of different publications. I just chose one of the many that, talks to diversity in particular. So many of them cite diversity being important in terms of originality and creativity of ideas, in terms of innovation, in terms of quality. And I think one of the topics that comes up often in these conversations of, how do we make sure everyone is being served, especially in retrofitting of residential spaces, quality ends up being one of the topics of conversation. So if we're thinking about how do we get the best quality, diversity is one of the ways that we can do that, right? One of the researches that I saw cited also talked about there being a need not just for diverse individuals to be hired, but for there to be a culture that accommodates those different voices. So I thought that was a really key point to just make clear and understood. And then, of course, my favorite one is just, it's kind of the right thing to do. So that's my top of mind one, but whichever one hits home, whichever one, helps you make the business case, if it's, the opportunity for, expanded profits, if it's better quality, innovation, if it's a combination of those things, however it makes it work. But there's lots of different business case scenarios of why diversity is important, why it's especially important in environmental work, environmental justice work, and why it can be really key to making sure that we're reaching all communities, everyone that we need to for these environmental goals that we have. So this is a really terrible chart, I'll admit it myself, but as a former investment banker, I had to put at least one terrible chart in here. So this is a chart just highlighting kind of where we are at in terms of diversity across the US. So just if you take the rightmost column, it is like all the labor force, what is the division between like age, male, female, race, etc. So this is out of all our population, there's all these different percentage of people that are in the workforce. How many of those, what's the breakdown of race and ethnicity as far as, who's in construction? So I think that's where you really see a bump in terms of white individuals and Hispanic individuals, which is kind of an interesting nuance. Then how many of those people are, within construction managers? What is the breakdown of race, ethnicity, male, female? So that's where you see a really big bump in terms of males as well. And then specifically just choosing one of the trades, one of the industries, looking at plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters. So that's where you see a huge bump, 98% male within that specific trade. That's where you see kind of one of the lower ones in terms of Black and African American representation, only about half of what, they would represent in terms of the workforce. And then kind of middling for Hispanic compared to like what they represent in construction. So the reason I bring this up, and this is not at all nuanced to location or place. This is all across the US. So it's going to be different based on where you are at specifically. But I just highlight a couple of things. So here we see, when we talk about diversity, I often think of, what do I compare it to? What are we wanting to achieve? What are we striving for? What would let us know that we're there, that we've made it, right? So I think this brings up a couple of things in this chart, even though it is terrible. I think one, it brings up that there's an overrepresentation of Hispanics or Latinos in construction overall. And I think anyone kind of, in a lot of different areas can see that just walking out the door and looking at the roofing projects that may be happening in your neighborhood, at the laborers that are involved. So within that specific demographic, we see a lot of Latinos, a lot of Hispanic people being involved in construction, but at the lowest level, most risky and lowest paid trades and positions. And you see that just comparing that to, how many end up being construction managers or how many end up being in higher wage, higher paid trades like plumbers, pipe fitters, steam fitters. What you see is the story is way different for Black and African Americans. They're just underrepresented overall in every sector of construction. And then for females, the same kind of story. So I bring this up just to bring up the fact that diversity is nuanced and different. And, the US census designations of race and ethnicity are not even specific enough to really kind of dig into the details. This may vary by specific country of origin. This might vary whether people are immigrant versus non-immigrant. This may vary based on location and place. So this is just to kind of clue us into like some of the nuances that can be happening, and also just bring up the question or just the thought point of, do we want to approach different populations differently? Do we want to have different marketing messages, different programming even, based on the specifics of, a specific culture, race, ethnicity, gender, etc. So diversity, I think, is very place-based. It's very regional. It's very local. It's just something that you need to work on, or you are already working on at a local level. I like to think about diversity through the entire vertical of every trade. So not just thinking about how we get people into a trade, but also how do we upskill them? How do we get them promoted? How do we get them into positions of power, positions where they can be the people that are hiring? Also the entrepreneurship route. Not everyone wants to be a worker for their entire career. Another career path is that business ownership, entrepreneurship route. How do we prepare people for that transition, for those types of work opportunities? And then are there things that are race or culture specific? So in preparation for the seminar, we were just having conversations amongst ourselves, and we were talking about the nuances of differences of language, of country of origin. There is a workforce program in the Midwest that leverages the specific refugee population. They are new entrants into the U.S. They are legal entrants. They are allowed to work. They're looking for where they can work. They may have limited English, but some of them may have skill sets that are either applicable or tangentially applicable to certain trades. So this workforce program has been able to leverage that, but they've also been able to, they were able to find basically cultural liaisons and people that could speak the language and speak to the community and let them know about these programs. So there's different things that can be done at a very kind of local and specific level that targets specific communities and helps them in a very nuanced way. And I think this may be the wave of the future as we're thinking about our programs. I think oftentimes we set up our programs to be kind of broadly applicable, but is it time to get really, really specific? Is it time to do like, the car sales model where, the way I market to a soccer mom is different. The way I market to, the gentleman that just retired from his Fortune 500 company. So how do we think about our programs? How do we tailor our programs to our specific local situations? And this is just a laundry list. If you guys already work in economic development, workforce development, contractor development, you are already, super aware of some of these challenges. I just mentioned them here. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is just what came to mind as I was thinking about it. But as we think about how we create programs that address some of these inequities. It's oftentimes helpful to start with what are the challenges, what are the obstacles, and how do we create a program that helps people overcome these challenges and obstacles. So I'll just highlight some of the ones that came to mind immediately. On the workforce side was just language, childcare was a big one, especially on for anyone that was primary caregiver. Immigration status, the time, that you need to be training, that you may not be getting paid. On the contractor side, most of the contractors and what they highlight to me is lack of access to capital, either affordable, especially in the affordable realm, lack of network. So being connected to the right person and the right information at the right time. So not getting a slew of different types of trainings all at once, but really having their information tailored to what exactly they need at that point in time in their business. So just a couple key takeaways. I think diversity is so much more complicated than we often on the surface talk about. And we do need to think about maybe some very nuanced solutions as we progress in our work to make sure that everyone is included economically in this just transition. I think that when we talk about diversity, I would love for us to talk about diversity at all levels. So the entire vertical up and down from CEO all the way down to the first entrant and entry-level positions, just because they can have so much more of a ripple effect in terms of being seen, in terms of representation, in terms of having people aspire to be in that position once they see themselves. So sometimes it may be a situation where we might want to fill from, the top on down. It might make more sense to address like who is at the top and how do we fill those positions with who we want filtering down. So just food for thought. But if you would like to get in touch with me, this is my email address. I can put it in the chat as well. Our organization's website, and also you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Monica. That was incredible discussion. So I'm just going to pick, I have two follow-up questions actually, and meanwhile, Sandy could actually set up her presentation. So one of our participants is curious about the sources for the beautiful chart that you have put up for the presentation. So are there any resources that you suggest one should look up to know about these sort of diversity across the vertical layer for workforce, like for the particular workforce?
Yeah. So and I think I listed them in the presentation. So I think you'll be sending out the presentation later, right? Yeah. So everyone will get a copy, and I put in the links, as the long form so that you can, even if you can't click on it, you can copy it down. But basically, there's a national, Department of Labor website that has data on all of these different verticals. So if you wanted on electricians, on, we saw the one for plumbers, on HVAC, on all different types of positions. They have, information on all of those. The other thing is that by state, usually what is usually termed your Department of Labor or whoever is in charge of like your labor and workforce will also have some sort of data available to you. So This data was also available in Washington. I know that for sure.
Mhm.
But it's typically available, yeah, across at least federal and state.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Monica. I have one more question, which is like there are two parts to it. So one is like I'm just curious, the diversity, like if there is a workforce diversity plan, it could be like a broader plan, but then there are so many different layers in the vertical. So does this plan effectively engage and address all of these challenges, or like, sometimes are there something that like left out? So how does this whole thing work out?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think I'll be honest, I think if any of us as nonprofits or even government entities had figured out the workforce or contractor challenge, like we would be shouting it to the four winds, right? I
Right.
think we're all still trying to figure it out. I think we're all iterating and experimenting on what works and what doesn't. And
Mhm.
I think the challenge is that oftentimes we'll go to these national conferences, and even those that have had local successes or successes in certain populations, it's not always directly transferable, again, because all of those nuances that can happen that are place-based and unique to your locality.
Mhm.
So I think that the more we think about those differences and those nuances, the more we kind of like note them down and tailor them, the more we can say like, okay, this may or may not work, or these are the parallels that are the same, or these are the challenges that we addressed. And being a little more specific, I think, may help us in knowing what aspects of certain programs we can kind of port over
Right.
and utilize or experiment with versus those that we can't,
Mhm.
because it's not going to be exactly the same for everyone. And I
Right.
think in an era where we talk so much about scale and, you hear about private equity firms that have these just hockey sticks of growth. I think it's just a different game for us in workforce and contractor development. And I don't know how to make scale with people.
Mhm.
I think you can scale technologies. I think it's very hard to scale people.
Absolutely. I can relate to that because I think the challenge actually starts at the grassroots level because you have to localize the problem. And it could be different at different locals. So then you sort of like build out a chart. These are the problems. And then there has to be subsections to the diversity plan so that it could work for all these sections in a different way. Just one more follow-up question. Is there any program that you would want to highlight to this section, like, if there are programs, has there been any program that has been successful or, is a model that could be replicated for other areas?
I mean, I think I think there's like little successes here and there from a lot of different folks. I'll put it in the chat about the organization in the Northern Midwest that has that success with the refugee program, but because it's escaping me right now. But I
Mhm.
think uh, shameless plug, I am excited about something internally that we've been able to do for
Okay.
Emerald Cities within our contractor development program. We've been able to, I think oftentimes we forget there's three legs to the stool. We have the education piece, we have the connection piece, and then the money, we're just like, oh, well, we can connect you to some loans.
Mhm.
Um, and oftentimes that's just not sufficient. So the number one reason small businesses fail is lack of capital.
Right.
So what we've been able to do is we've been able to do some grants in some of our regions, up to $20,000 for small businesses. And we're just at the beginning aspects of being able to get those funds out. So I'm excited to see what that leads to and how that impacts those businesses. So we don't have the results of those yet, but I'm excited to see what could happen and what I think may happen when they have all three aspects that they need for their business. Um, but I think there's all kinds of people kind of in different parts of the country experimenting with things that
Right.
I've been inspired by. And yeah.
Thank you so much. And I would look forward to the learnings from the experiment that you are currently doing right now. So we do have some more insights in the chat, but I'm going to take that up during the panel discussion. And I would like to now welcome our second panelist, Sandy, who is now going to take the conversation forward from economic inclusion to opportunities. Thank you so much, Monica, for your time. And I request all the participants, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat box so that we could take up your questions during the panel discussion section. Sandy has done with her presentation. Sandy, over to you.
All right. So as Monica just said, not everything is going to work for everyone. So what I'm going to present is a whole bunch of ideas to throw at the wall and see what sticks. And just like Monica was saying, you're going to have to figure out what works for your organization and in your area, because different regions do different things. So that all being said, let's talk about where are the opportunities. We have several opportunities and avenues to enhance diversity among contractors and workers. These include training and certification programs, financial support, partnerships, and targeted outreach. These four areas become the cornerstones of addressing the barriers that often prevent minority and women-owned businesses from participating fully in our industry. Each of these strategic areas not only helps diverse owned businesses participate, but it strengthens the clean energy sector as a whole. So training and certification, one of my big loves in life, these programs are crucial for equipping diverse contractors with skills and credentials needed to succeed in the clean energy sector. Here are several approaches we can implement. Language translated materials and trainings. These include certification courses. By offering resources in multiple languages, we can ensure that language barriers don't prevent talented individuals from entering our field. Offer trainings in economically disadvantaged areas. Consider partnering with community centers and local schools to host training sessions on heat pump HVAC systems or heat pump water heaters, and deliver hands-on training directly to contractors who may not have the resources to travel for training, because we all know travel is expensive and time-consuming. So establishing mentorship programs can help new businesses or those with limited English proficiency navigate the complexities of our industry. For instance, pairing experienced contractors with new minority-owned businesses for year-long mentorship could significantly boost their success rate. And cross-training, we can attract diverse talent from adjacent industries. For example, we can design programs that help solar installers transition into heat pump installation, a cross-pollination that serves both industries. This broadening of skill sets helps increase the pool of qualified contractors while helping diversify talent pipelines. And lastly, specialized certifications. Creating special certifications for clean energy workers can provide a career path and signal expertise. A great example of this is the Oregon Heat Pump Water Heater Installation License, which is a specialty license, and it bypasses the normal amounts of time for an installer to learn all of the nuances of the plumbing industry when we really just need them to install heat pump water heaters. So you can help your contractors earn the Department of Energy Skilled certifications for heat pump HVAC and water heaters to ensure a high standard of expertise across diverse businesses. These training and certification initiatives can significantly enhance the skills and credibility of diverse contractors, positioning them for success in our industry. And we just talked about financial support, so this is a timely slide. Financial barriers are often a big thing that prevents diverse contractors from fully participating in the clean energy sector. So work with banks and other funding sources that are committed to diverse businesses to look for additional funding. And here are ways that you can offer and programs that you can design to help integrate them. And this becomes a community thing. So you can offer stipends for necessary training in clean energy products and technologies that make it more affordable for diverse businesses to upskill their workers. For example, we could provide stipends to attend advanced heat pump installation courses. Consider advocating for local utility programs to fund scholarships or stipends for diverse contractors seeking training or certifications. Development grants, something Monica was just mentioning, providing grants to upskill all aspects of businesses from the front office management all the way to the back of the shop technical skills. Like every company can use this, even large companies, I got to be honest. These can help diverse contractors compete more effectively. Consider microloan programs that provide financial assistance to small contractors who need capital to purchase equipment to hire staff and scale up their operations. Trade school and college sponsorships. By funding education for underrepresented groups and communities, we can build a pipeline of diverse talent. Consider establishing a scholarship program that covers tuition, materials, and certification exam fees for students from diverse backgrounds studying HVAC, the plumbing trades, or renewable energy systems. Try a DOE Energy Skilled Certification Scholarship, which covers the time and testing costs for contractors to achieve those Department of Energy Skilled certifications, which can remove a significant barrier. We could sponsor 100 diverse contractors annually to obtain this valuable credential, covering costs such as course fees, testing, and travel expenses. And this certification helps them get more customers because, as we all know, customers are looking for contractors who actually know what they're doing. And this credential lets a customer know this contractor has had the right training. These financial support mechanisms can help level the playing field, enabling diverse contractors to invest in their businesses and workforce without taking on unsustainable debt. So, partnerships, and another big favorite of mine. Strategic partnerships can create pathways for diverse contractors to enter and thrive in the clean energy sector. Here are some key partnership opportunities. Supplier diversity networks. We should encourage diverse owned businesses to register and participate in these networks. This helps open doors for smaller businesses to work on larger clean energy projects. Also consider hosting or sponsoring supplier diversity events where diverse contractors can meet with larger corporations and utilities, showcase their capabilities, and secure contracts for clean energy projects. Educational institutions. Partnering with trade schools, colleges, and high schools can create a pipeline of diverse talent entering into the field. We might establish a program where local HVAC companies offer paid internships to students from underrepresented groups, providing hands-on experience with heat pump installations and earning credits for their work. We can also partner with educational partners to create mentorship programs that fast track diverse students into clean energy careers. How about collaborating with the local community colleges to host clean energy workshops in underserved communities? These workshops can focus on HVAC and plumbing certifications and provide hands-on training. Invite your local contractors, diverse businesses, and high school students who might be interested in a career in the trades, because we all know we need more of those. Business associations. These organizations can help us connect with locally owned diverse businesses and help them grow in and participate. This is where it becomes regional. Do you have a local Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? How about Women in HVAC? Is there a Black Contractors Association or Minority Business Association in your area? Look for all of those. They might be there already. Ideas for working with those diverse business associations. Create a mentorship program where established contractors in complementary fields, because we don't want to create competition, guide new diverse businesses through their first year in the clean energy sector, helping them navigate challenges like bidding on utility program projects and provide the support they need for these businesses to thrive. Sponsor networking events for local minority business associations, connecting small contractors with larger industry players and utility programs. Work with economic development offices to promote the availability of grants and loans that assist minority-owned businesses in entering the clean energy field. By fostering partnerships, we can create a supportive ecosystem that nurtures diverse talent for businesses, from education to successful industry participation. And outreach. Let's discuss this extremely important topic. Effective outreach is crucial for connecting with diverse contractors and workers. Here are strategies to enhance our outreach efforts. To effectively increase participation, we need to ensure that our materials are accessible. This can be done by offering translated onboarding materials, conducting in-language campaigns targeting diverse business groups. We also need to be visible in the communities we want to reach, sponsoring industry association events such as local clean energy technologies conference or an expo that features businesses working in the sector. Think of every community probably has home shows, those home improvement expos. That's a great opportunity. These create opportunities for relationship building that can be promoted to students to help drive enrollment and interest in the field. Think about marketing campaigns that raise awareness about opportunities that can help diverse contractors engage in the clean energy sector. Do you have a local Hispanic newspaper or Chinese radio stations? Those are all opportunities. And when you're working with those, highlighting success stories is a powerful way to inspire action. When contractors from underrepresented communities see others like themselves succeeding, it fosters a sense of belonging and motivation. Finally, we need to run campaigns targeted at students and people who work with their hands, making sure that young, diverse talent knows that the clean energy sector is a viable and rewarding career path. Partner with vocational schools to host clean energy career days, demonstrating the opportunities in heat pumps or other clean energy jobs. A lot of young people want to make a difference, and working in the clean energy field gives them a chance to impact their community and have the satisfaction of and pride of a job well installed that reduces carbon emissions. By focusing on these 4 areas, training, certification, and financial support, partnerships, and targeted outreach, we can create meaningful pathways for diverse contractors and workers to enter and succeed in the clean energy sector. This approach not only enhances equity and inclusion, but it also strengthens our industry by bringing in fresh perspectives and talents. Let's commit to implementing these strategies and building a more diverse and resilient clean energy workforce.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for taking forward the conversation. I have few follow-up questions, and all of these are from your favorite sections. So the first one is going to be the financial one. I can agree with it completely because I know there are certain programs where contractors are now being incentivized so that they could sort of, like embrace this technology, understand it, and also could take it forward. But what is like the success rate for this program at the moment? What challenges have you come across in any program? Like, why wouldn't people want to be associated with a training or certification and be part of, like, as a certified plumber or installer for a certain brand when they are getting incentivized? And why wouldn't, like, they embrace this technology or take advantage of this particular program? I just want to have your thoughts on that.
Well, those are kind of 2 different things. One is that I think there's very few businesses that don't want to participate and encourage diversity. So getting them on board is easy. Proving success is a completely different thing, and that's where you need tracking mechanisms to go, all right, so if we provided stipends for 40 students, how many of them made it all the way through the course? And if they didn't make it all the way through the course, why? What was the reason that made them drop? Because that helps us refine our programs. It helps us refine even the education. Like, why did we got you into an HVAC school? Why did you walk away from that? Did you not like the work? So we kind of have to ask, like the 5 questions all the way down and
Right.
figure out why we're not seeing the success that we want. I think getting the success set up is one piece of work, but then figuring out how to make it as effective as possible is a completely different piece of work.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add one follow-up question. Sure, Monica, I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add one thing from the contractor perspective. So I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind and not lose sight of is that, and this is speaking from the contractor side, like you can offer trainings and certifications, you can even offer them for free. From the contractor's perspective, what ends up happening is that they have to consider the loss of revenue, the loss of profit for that day. So even
Right.
getting something for free is not actually free to them. It actually is a loss. If they have staff out that day, they're not earning money that day. So they're taking a loss to do that certification or training. So then the first question in their mind is, will this certification or training result in increased revenue, business in the future?
Right.
Do my customers, by and large, care about this training certification, or do they not care?
Right.
So in situations where we found pushback or contractors not caring, they didn't see the business case, will this lead to future work? And if so, how? Show me those numbers. That's where you get the pushback. So I think the more we can put ourselves in the position of our clients and how things are impacting them in a very holistic way, the more we can either address those, or that's where you see like additional stipends coming into place to replace some portion of that revenue. That's where you see additional supports of trying to get additional business for them. So I just wanted to add that aspect to what Sandy had commented.
Yeah, we're doing like on tech, one of the things we're doing in our next round is we are adding stipends in for contractors to send people in for training because of exactly what you just mentioned, that they don't want to pull their people out of field for the day, especially if they're not sure. And one of the things that one of our vendors, Electrify My Home, brings out is the slide of here is the revenue opportunity of all of the people who are looking for heat pump water heater installers and can't find one. People who are looking for an HVAC installer and can't find one. So that you have to bring that revenue opportunity of there's this huge unserved market of people who want services. And they just can't find a contractor who's going to do it for them.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to follow up with one more question that's from one of the participants. It's like, sometimes contractors do not realize the resources out there that they could capitalize on and like upskill themselves. And the people who are hiring them, or with all these programs that we sort of develop for them, we just assume that they know. So there is some sort of a gap where there is a disconnect. So I just want to know your thoughts, Sandy and Monica, like how do we address this gap, if at all it exists in these particular incentive programs? Sandy, would you like to go first?
Actually, I'll let Monica go first.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and what's funny is that we were just talking about this yesterday with a community partner of ours, but thinking about new and creative ways to get in touch with people and make sure that the message is getting out. So I think for us, we heavily rely on community-based partners, even if they're not specifically within the workforce or contractor development realm. If social service organizations, just community-based organizations, so organizations that are in community, that speak the language, that are, especially if they have a physical space, just being able to get the word out via different methods. I mean, and going back to, I use the car example as like an example, but I think it's a useful one just because, you're not using the same methods to reach the same clients if you're selling a car. You're not, you're using magazine, you're using billboards, you're using all kinds of different methods. No car seller would just use one method. So I think if we can apply, also we're going to be using different methods, and it's going to vary by population. I think that's okay. And we just have to acknowledge that and ideally work that into our budgets and our grant requests so that we have the resources to do that effectively.
Absolutely. And this is, one should also address this problem that we are not just talking about 10, 15, or 20 people. We are talking about a large mass of workforce. And it's just a learning step by step that you could actually figure out all these challenges and then pull up a sort of incentive program or a work diversity plan, and then reach out to each of these particular localized communities. So definitely this is going to be like a learning process. And over the years, all these strategies should come into play. I'm going to take one more question from the participants before I pull out some questions for the panel discussion. So Javier had a question. Do we know where contractors doing energy efficiency and electrification work are hiring from? So Monica, if you want to answer this question, and Sandy, if you please feel free to add on to it.
By and large, yeah. So I'll give kind of like my blanket answer is that so the majority of people that are in positions to hire are white, male, usually cisgender, and typically skewing older, right? There was this whole study that was done that said people tend to hire people that look like them. And I think you see this in the majority of those large, contracting firms. I think you see this in, across the board in the Fortune 500 companies, et cetera. And so that is part of the reason why we need so many more diverse firms out there of a size where they can also hire, because it's just a natural human tendency to want to hire people that look like you. The other thing that happens is, I'm just going to generically call it a good old boys club, right? So there's, a person that's been in the industry, their nephew is just coming out of high school. They've been watching their uncle, work in the trades for a while. They know what that's about. Uncle says, I know a guy over at the union hall. Let me just connect you with him. Let me make sure he gets you in. So that kind of thing happens, either organically, handshake, whatever it is. So people become aware of the industry, people become acquainted with it, people get networked into it. And it is all these kind of like relationships, these networks, these nexuses. And there's nothing necessarily inherently bad with that. But if you're not in that network, you don't have that same opportunity. So I think there's a couple of challenges is that, when you have the bulk of the hiring people looking a certain way, being of a certain way, and not having a whole lot of, I would say carrots or sticks necessarily to hire or view things in a different way. Or maybe it's always, a must do as opposed to an inherent desire to do, then I think it becomes challenging. I think there are companies that are trying to do things the right way and trying to hire more diversely. And I think that the challenge then, and I think it gets mentioned further in the chat, is how do you also then create an environment, a culture that is welcoming to people of different viewpoints? Because it's kind of a two-part component, right? It's getting people in, and it's also making them feel welcome and appreciated, and like their contribution and their thoughts matter within the context of that company. So I think that different organizations are struggling with different aspects of that, and once you get people all the way through your training and hired, and how do you combat the attrition that happens afterwards? So is combating cultural norms and what becomes the normal of on a job site that shouldn't be the normal there. So there's also organizations trying to tackle that. Like here locally, we have a new that tries to do training for job sites and construction firms to be more welcoming. So is it the be all end all? No, but it's a start, and can we do more in that vein?
Absolutely. And I definitely would like to add that point that it's not just about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's also about a sense of belonging, where you are also involved in decision making. So that is where we sort of break the structural barrier and like everyone, like all these voices matter. So definitely that is a very crucial point. Sandy, would you want to add any more points to this particular discussion?
Yes, and one of the things that there's a great example of what Monica was just talking about is they have the same problem in the STEM field, which has been traditionally very male dominated. And we get women into the STEM fields, and they get into technology and stuff, and they find the environment that they're working in to be hostile, and they bail and they run. And that's a big problem in the STEM industries, and they're very, very well aware. That they can't keep people in there just because the overall work environment is just not welcoming and inclusive. I mean, it's not the work. The work is great. It's the people that they're working with, which is something that I think is going to change over time. We have a new generation coming up through the millennials are hitting their stride. Gen Z is coming out of school and getting ready to go, and they're of a different breed. And that's when we start looking to engage with and bring people into the pipeline. We need to be working on getting people who are young people in particular who enjoy working with their hands. They don't necessarily want to do sit behind a keyboard all day like we do on Zoom calls.
Absolutely.
And they want to go out and do stuff. And they're also very environmentally minded, and we should channel their energies and their enthusiasm into the clean energy field, and that they will bring with them diversity and inclusion.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And I'm going to follow up on that with one of the questions on the panel discussion board. So it's like engaging the current generation. So there could be like millions of people out there, and say very few people actively want to be engaged in this clean energy field. But then how do we sort of make this put this in the forefront, that more and more people do understand that this field is sustainable as a career pathway? So I want to have your thoughts, and Monica, please feel free to add on your thoughts once Sandy has finished with hers.
I think it depends an awful lot on where the student is coming from. For some, it's like, oh, great, I can earn a six-figure career and not sit in an office all day and not have to be on Zoom calls all day and have that sense of pride of walking away from a job at the end of the day, which let's be honest, most of us don't really have that. We finish a day and our next day is like, okay, I got 10 more meetings and 6 more Zoom calls. Rather than somebody who's just installed a heat pump water heater, and they can walk away and they can stand back and take a picture of it and go, look, I did that. And we don't have that in on the admin side of the field. And I think we should promote more of that satisfaction of being able to look at your own work and see what you did, because I think that's going to be a big driver when we start getting into the younger people who are just entering the field.
So like this is was generic for like the students who are in, say, college, getting graduated. But if I like to put it across as underrepresented communities, for whom even like accessibility to job opportunities will also face a bit of difficulties or struggles. So for them, there's always this question like, is this going to sustain me for a longer period of time? Because this is a matter of livelihood as well. So in that case, how can we make, not just like with an incentive program, but are there any other ways where we can actually make this engaging as well as sustainable in the long run?
Well, I think, and this is a story that I like from last year's iHockey conference. We were talking to a like mid-20s guy who was enrolled in one of the local HVAC schools, and he was a security guard. And he was looking at his career path going, wow, I got nowhere to go here. And he decided, I need something that's going to sustain me for the next 30 years. And he decided to go and enroll in school and learn a different trade. So there's this whole untapped group of people out there who are in dead-end jobs. They're not happy, and we need to, like, through our work, start reaching out to them and saying, you know what, here, there's a home for you in this field.
Absolutely. Monica, would you like to add on to this thought?
Yeah, I would just say that I think Sandy hit it on the head earlier in terms of preferences. I think if you're going to have people be long-term in the industry, they have to just inherently love it. And the
Right.
type of people that love it are the people that like to do things with their hands. They don't want to be sitting behind a desk. They're active. They're problem solvers. They are like some of the most amazing problem solvers that I know. And they want to be done with the project's done. They want to be done. They want to go enjoy their families, their free time, whatever it is. So I think it is also about fit. Like, not everyone is going to be a good fit for this, like any other role.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that thrive off of that sense of accomplishment at having, solved a problem, fixed something in someone's home, fixed something for someone's building, and can move on to the next thing and solve the next problem. Like, that is a personality. That is a person, those are people that are out there. We just need to like find them, make sure they know about it.
So let's say we do have this bunch of people who really love their job and who want to get their hands dirty, install a heat pump water heater or any other technology for that matter. But how do we make sure that we can create a network where they have accessibility to jobs? So like, for example, minority contractors. Can there be like a network with, say, home builders or any suppliers, manufacturers, where there is a certain surety that you won't be running out of work? Like, you have work today, you will get next week as well, moving forward, and this is going to be sustainable again in the long run. I want to have your thoughts on that, Monica, and I'll start with you first.
Oof. I mean, so I mean, that's a tough one because construction inherently is a fairly volatile industry.
Right.
I don't know if there's anyone that can really kind of, combat
Cyclical.
that. I think, yeah, it's very cyclical. So I think the contractors that have been most successful at keeping things steady
Mhm.
are those that have been able to leverage different areas of the market. So the interesting thing about construction is it touches on so many different types of clients,
Mhm.
everything from like, a single family homeowner and, Joe down the street to, people that own huge office buildings and properties to government, which is the number one client in the US, right? In terms of buying power. So that strata of types of clients out there can also serve as a little bit of kind of rainy day insurance. If the, pace of new builds is slowing down, if you have government clients, that may help prop up your business in the meantime. If, right now there's a lot of incentives, so there's a lot of work in the residential space. That may not always be the case. That hasn't always been the case. So is there work that you can do otherwise? So I think diversification in terms of type of client has been one of the ways that people really kind of insulate their business from some of those kind of ups and downs.
Right.
I would say there's no one thing that can kind of like fully insulate it. I will also say that the unions can be challenging, especially for those from diverse backgrounds,
Mhm.
but being able to, increase your number of employees and, just send them back to the union hall when you don't need them for a certain project is a really nice aspect of being a union, signatory. So there are some really positives around that.
Right. And Sandy, do you want to add on to this? And I will
I
have a
would
question later.
I would say that it's not just a diversity problem, it's an industry problem.
Mhm.
And I'll use HVAC as an example, that you have heating season and cooling season, and then you have these graveyard seasons in between when a whole bunch of companies end up letting their staff go because they don't have enough work.
Right.
And the smarter companies have come up with service agreements to fill those big drops in revenue and customer demand, and say,
Mhm.
all right, so let's go out and let's do servicing of all of the stuff that we've installed during these slow periods, so we don't have to let all of our people go. So it's an industry problem, not just we need to get more diverse contractors
Mhm.
regular. It's a how do we even out the workflow in our clean energy fields? Like, how much solar is sold in the dead of winter when it's 4 weeks before Christmas
Mhm.
and everybody's already spent their money? So those big cycles become industry killers for especially the small businesses who are the ones who are more likely to hire diverse people.
Right. And I've also heard that sometimes there are certain plumbing or HVAC firms which merge with smaller businesses,
Mhm.
expanding their particular business. So then it also is like they're dominating the market with work or other opportunities, and the smaller ones all sort of like go in the backstage and they are not getting much work. So this could also be like, as you mentioned, an industry problem, as well as like it depends upon season, area, and how many dominant players are there in the market when it comes to like the stakeholders. I'm just going to have one more follow-up question from the participant, and I'm going to pick the last question from the panel discussion board. So the participant is asking, would you say that commercial work is more cyclical than residential work?
I think residential is, but you know what? I'm not a contractor. So are there any contractors out there who have a better answer?
So he has also put some of his thoughts. He says, from my perspective, contractors performing weatherization and electrification work to retrofit older buildings and houses have a lot more consistent workload. Any thoughts on that, Monica?
I would say it probably feels that way, but I would say it's also an order of magnitude issue.
Mm-hmm.
You lose a commercial contractor, you don't get it. That's going to be a much bigger hit than losing a residential. So I think it's also like that may be also what may be skewing it. I don't have a very good sense of it, but that's the other thing that comes to mind when I heard that question.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I'm going to just one last final question before we close out for the day. So what strategies can be implemented to overcome language barriers? Because when we talk about partnerships, financial supports, incentive programs, all of this, is language a barrier for people accessing these resources? And if they do overcome, say, the stage 1, would they again face when trying to get work orders? Because again, language is a barrier and they're not able to communicate properly or understand what the consumer wants. So how can we overcome this particular issue?
I will take this because we're actually wrestling with this on tech right now.
Okay.
Is we're trying to implement in-language trainings, and we have some of our community-based organizations telling us, yes, we absolutely need this. You know, we have some Chinese contractors, we have some Spanish contractors, but we are also hearing on the other side from some of our big partners that a worker, or an installer, I'll just say, who can't speak English is really kind of a problem, because they can't communicate with their coworkers, they can't communicate with the client, so they have no career path until they start learning to be able to speak more English. Now, Spanish may be a little less of a barrier, because the population of Spanish speakers is growing so substantially, but it is still a problem. You've got to have somebody out on the job who can communicate with the customer.
Monica, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, there's just so many aspects at which language can be troublesome. So I think language in terms of sometimes the end client, especially on the residential side, can have a different language than what the contractor speaks, right? Sometimes it's the workers and like how much they can interact and really be effective in their job if they have limited English abilities. I think the thing that we discussed also is just difference in dialects. Chinese, we refer to Chinese as a language, but it's not a single language. There's so many dialects and there's so many differences and nuances between the two. The other kind of interesting nuance that we've come across is that as we've been doing a little bit of work in Spanish and in Chinese, mostly Mandarin, and trying to translate some of these very technical environmental terms that have been generated within the context of United States or even kind of a Western European lens, don't come off the same way in a different language. They may be, Google Translate may say this is the word, or even more official versions of it, and it just doesn't mean anything, or it means something slightly different, and the meaning isn't coming across in the same way. So just even trying to find different wording or simpler explanations for things has been challenging. And just even the term weatherization itself, some of these terms and concepts don't exist in other countries and other languages, and that's another thing to kind of take into consideration, is that these concepts aren't always translating well, even when you do have something in language. I would say just one last thing is that as we have some of our locations and where I am at in Seattle has a fairly diverse community of different languages. So Spanish is obviously a big one, Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese can be another big one, but we have a significant, Filipino population with Tagalog. We have a number of other good, quantity of Vietnamese folks. And how many of those are we really kind of reaching and targeting and inviting in to this space? Because at the end of the day, we want to invite people in and make them feel comfortable, regardless of where they're what their role is and what their role will be in these trades.
I want to add on to something Monica just said, because we're working on this on tech quite a bit. And somebody we were talking with recently pointed out that the term building envelope does not translate.
Okay.
They're just, like, it's like weatherization, that there is no concept. If you're trying to translate that, you get building and envelope, and they are not the same thing.
Absolutely. That is, I think that is relatable. So even if you overcome these barriers, it's sort of like explain the concept and make sure, what strategy should one ensure to, like, that there is integration of this workforce, like these people in the workforce, and they have access to job even moving forward. Like, it's not just about what is happening now, but then 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, they are integrated and a part of the system, in the sense that not just inclusion, but there's a sense of belonging as well. Any thoughts on this? Just the final thoughts. This is the final question. Sandy, if you want to go first.
I would say we have to have consistent jobs. That there is the lure of having a stable paycheck is, as we all know, pretty compelling. So as we look at what we're creating in the industry, because we are creating it, we have to create stable jobs that somebody can count on to make a rent payment, a mortgage payment, make sure that their family's got food on the table. These things have to be stable. They can't just be, oh, we have funding this month, and now we don't have money.
Right. Monica, your final thoughts on this?
Okay, this is my last hot take. So on this part, I would say that on the environmental side, when you talk to environmental organizations, when you talk to some of government, they talk about the lack of workforce to do clean energy efficiency work, right?
Mhm.
But then you talk to the contractors and the workers, and they say, we don't see it, we don't feel it, we're not bulking up for it. It's about the same.
Mhm.
So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. My theory, this is my hot take, my theory is that if you were to take the diverse contractors that tend to be smaller, tend to be not of a size where they can really take on government contracts, I think if you grew those contractors up to a size, they could take on those government contracts. Because I think there's probably enough workforce, but they need to be grown and developed and nurtured so that they can really take on those larger contracts. That is really where the gap is in terms of,
Right.
we only have a certain number of electricians. We have the same people always
Mhm.
applying for the same RFPs. We'd like some other folks grow that batch of really kind of mini and micro organizations up. Then
Absolutely.
you'll have more people that can bid on those projects, and they inherently will need more workers.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Great
So
answer.
it's not just about identifying the gaps, it's also like making a note of it and coming with a strategy so that it is more inclusive, like in the actual sense. And that's where I think it should start, when we are actually looking for people, and then the funding, like financial support or training support, then it's not the same person coming in again and again. There are newer people coming in, and that's how we grow bigger. Thank you so much for all of this information and the fantastic discussion that we had. I'm really appreciate your time and consideration, and for putting up this presentation. Thank you so much, Monica and Sandy, for joining us today. We'll be forwarding the slides as well as the webinar recording to all these participants who have registered for the webinar. And on behalf of my co-host, Joe, I just wish you all a very great rest of your day, and thank you once again for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.